Yo, welcome back. So I've completed a lot of many of the chapters I revised actually. I finished the old book completely, as you can see here, chapter 7, 14. Yep, this is where the old book ends. I have revised everything in the book. It doesn't read like a manual anymore. No sudden lore dumps interrupting the reader. And I already started Act 2. This is the past the midpoint and it's going towards the ending of this whole chronicle, I guess. I have the scenes in my head. I've written so far up to chapter 3, um, but I still have to tie them together. I know exactly what has to happen, I just have to make it happen. All right, where were we? We finished chapter 1 with Arana's visions. Oh, actually, let me fix that. This should be I, not 1. Chapter 1. Okay, that's better. Save that. Alright, so this chapter is the longest in the first book. It was the longest in the first book, too. So, in this act, this is the longest chapter with the most words, word count. About 5,000, I think. But okay, let's start reading, right? Okay. Chapter 2. A beast within a beast. A quest for purification, the ill-stricken and his sibling. The Alchemia groaned as it cut through the waters of Leafengift Lake. You can see the ship. She was an old trade vessel, too old, some would say. Corrosion had eaten through her fittings, leaving metal brittle and flaking. The wooden hull creaked with every wave, its planks warped by years of neglect. Even the deck bore the scars of time, cracked boards, faded stains, the dull grey of wood that had long forgotten polish. Each wave drew a tired protest from her frame. For most of the passengers, the lake's fresh air was either a blessing or a curse. Some leaned over the rails, pale and miserable, feeding the lake. Others closed their eyes and breathed deeply, savoring the scent of open waters. Nash did neither. He stood at the edge of the deck, staring down into the dark ripples below. Orange fur framed his face, interrupted by old scars, and one newer would ruin. Orange fur framed his face, interrupted by old scars, and one newer wound running vertically across his left cheek. Sharp claws holding the ship railings. There was no mistake about it, he was a Dragonian soldier, a beastfolk catling. Once long ago humans, now a people with animal heads and other parts. His eyes were fixed on the water, but he saw brilliant forest instead, memory blurring with the lake water. The last 10 days flashed before his eyes. So basically this scene just sets us up, him on a railing, staring into the water and thinking about the past 10 days, what was happening. Vonmin village, Vonmin village had always been quiet. Their house stood apart from the village, pressed against brilliant forest, like it was trying to hide. Leonard Lionroar had chosen the place deliberately. Soldiers did not seek crowds when they wanted peace. Atta had died giving birth to Ismail. A few years later, Leonard himself had died fighting the exomorphs. Loriora, Atta's sister, had raised them both after their mother's death. She had done it quietly, without complaint, feeding two growing catlings, with hands already tired from grief. Nash learned strength from her, Ismail learned kindness. Whatever they had become, it had begun with her. Now she stood by the doorway, watching Ismail string his bow. Where are you off to this time? She asked. The fur had faded to grey with age. Her fur had faded to grey with age, though her yellow eyes still held warmth. Her dress was old and patched, mended too many times to count. Ismail flexed the bowstring, testing its tension. Brilliant forest, he said. I'll bring something back, maybe something big. He smiled at her. If I do, you can finally buy yourself a new dress instead of spending everything on food. Loriora shook her head gently. You're a good boy, Ismail, but I don't need dresses. I need you both fed. He rolled his shoulders. I'm not a boy anymore, Auntie. He grabbed his older brother's hunting leathers from the peg near the door and pulled them on. Loriora hesitated. Could you wait for Nash? He should arrive today. You could go together. Ismail shrugged her hand away. I don't need him hovering. Nash hunted alone years. I don't need him hovering. Nash hunted alone younger than this. That sounds weird. Younger than I am, maybe. Okay, I will check that later. He slung his bow over his shoulder and reached for the small hammer hanging beside the door, the one their father had given him before leaving for his final campaign. A good luck charm more than a weapon. He forgot the supply pack on the table. Loriora noticed too late. Ismail, wait. He was already gone. Her voice followed him into the forest. He did not turn back. Loriora stood by the window, clutching Ismail's forgotten pack, staring into the forest with wide, unmoving eyes. Okay, this needs separation to look a bit better. Nash returned at dusk, worn out and tired after traveling for 5 days. He knew something was wrong the moment he stepped inside. Aunt Loriora, Nash said, dropping his gear. Where's Ismail? She turned slowly. Relief flooded her face, then collapsed into fear. He went hunting, she said. He hasn't come back yet. Nash felt his stomach drop. He reached for his spear without thinking. It's not your fault, he told her firmly. I will find him. I'll find him. Loriora handed him Harvey an oil torch, with trembling fingers. That's too expensive, Auntie, Nash protested. I will take a plain torch. She shook her head, pushing the prize torch into his hand. Just bring him home. He accepted. The forest followed him whole. Brulim was dense, old, alive with unseen movement. Without the Harvian torch, he would have missed the trail in the ground entirely. Along a set of small footprints, there were followed. Wait a second. Along a set of small footprints, another followed. Another followed a bigger. Another followed dash a bigger one. Yes, that's exactly. Those prints weren't cattling. Too large, too deep. He followed them until the trees opened into a clearing. That was where he found it. A dead werewolf. Its claws were soaked in blood. Something protruded from its skull. Nash approached slowly. He recognized the small hammer from before he reached it. Ismail's hammer. When he pulled it free, blood spilled like a small fountain. His hand shook. Ismail, he whispered. More tracks led back toward Wanim, toward home. Nash ran. He heard Lorura scream before he reached the house. The front door shattered under his shoulder. Furniture lay destroyed. Glass glittered across the floor. A massive hole tore through the window. Blood marked a trail into the kitchen. Loriora lay at the basement door leading downstairs, torn apart, her body positioned deliberately against it. She had trapped the werewolf. For a moment, Nash froze, absorbing this whole scenario. Is it scenario or scene? Scene. I would say it's scene, right? It's a scene that he's seeing there. Okay. He dropped beside her, gazing at the pool of blood spreading beneath her. Afraid to touch her, afraid to even speak to her, she pulled him close with surprising strength. Don't kill him, she whispered, blood bubbling at her lips. It's Ismail, the amulet. I gave it to him. Her eyes fluttered. He'll change back at dawn if he does. Don't tell him. He won't remember. Her hand pressed against Nash's cheek. Or his cheek. I mean, yeah, she's talking to Nash. She paused to cough out blood. Find a cure. I promise, Nash said, choking on the words. She smiled once. The light faded from her eyes. Her hand dropped on the hard and blood-soaked board floor. She was gone. He remained kneeling long after Loyora's body went still. The werewolf, contained in the basement, battered against the door. It howled and clawed everything around it all night. Nash sat beside Loriora's body staring at his spear. The werewolf continued to batter the basement door. Each impact sent dust drifting from the ceiling beams. Each sound reminded him that his brother was still alive, just not himself. He covered Loriora with a blanket. His hands lingered at her shoulder, then withdrew. He stood slowly. His spear waited beside the door. The thought came quickly. One clean strike. He imagined it, opening the basement door, driving steel through Werewolf's skull before it could rise. Ending it before it could escape, ending it before it could hurt anyone else, ending it before dawn. His grip tightened around the spear. He moved toward the door. Halfway there he stopped. Loriora's last words echoed in his mind. Find a cure. His jaw clenched until his teeth ached. The intrusive thought left him, and he noticed that the door began to weaken. He dragged the heavy stove across the floor. Muscles burned as he forced it against the basement door. Wood groaned, hinges protested, the creature roared from below, throwing itself against the barricade. Nash braced it with furniture, chairs, tables, anything he could move. When he finished, sweat soaked with his fur and his arms trembling from strain. The house felt quiet except for the muffled sneering beneath the floor. He sank to the ground beside Loriora's body. Hours passed. He listened to the werewolf below, the slow creak of the house settling to the distant night sounds of Berlin forest. He counted each impact against the door, each breath he drew between them marking time in quiet endurance. For a brief moment the creature calmed. Exhaustion finally claimed him. Nash's eyes closed, just for a heartbeat. The basement door exploded with a sudden slam. Nash rose in a single motion, spear in hand. He stood over the basement entrance, breathing hard. "Stop," he whispered, not sure whether he meant the werewolf or himself. For a long moment he stayed there, poised to strike the door open. Then he remembered the amulet. The way Lorioras had smiled, the way she had said his brother's name. His shoulder sagged, he stepped back. Slow, deliberately, he placed the spear against the wall. He did not trust himself to hold it. Instead, he sat beside Loriora once more. "What did you do, brother?" His head sunk. "What did you do?" Nash did not sleep. He counted breaths between impacts, listening to claws scrape wood and stone, waiting for dawn. Light finally crept through the shattered window. The basement fell silent. Nash did not move for several minutes, ears sharp, listening for anything. Nothing. He approached the barricade, dismantled it piece by piece, spear in one hand. The door opened with a long, tired creak. Ismail lay naked on the cold floor, unconscious, his body streaked with dirt and blood. Deep gouged marks, deep gouges marked the walls. The floorboards were splintered from claws striking. Nash stood over him. His brother's chest rose and fell slowly. He saw it then clearly. How easy it would be. Ismail would never feel it. He knelt. The memory of the basement returned unbidden. His fingers twitched near the knife, then fell away. The image of the weapon entering Ismail's neck was vivid and clear. Disgust flooded Nash. He recoiled from himself and slapped his own face hard enough to make his ears ring. "Get it together," he growled under his own breath. He growled under his... I don't know, when I say own breath it sounds better, right? He growled under his breath. He growled under his own breath. No, own has to be there, it sounds better. Okay. Nash dressed Ismail in clean clothes, lifting him carefully and carried him to bed. Once he was sure that Ismail would stay that way, once he was sure that Ismail would stay the way he is, Nash did take a short rest. He burned Loriora's body that morning. Fire instead of burial. Always fire, as beast folk tradition demands. On this part, I wanted to have the lore say that they don't bury their bodies because exomorph remind them of bugs, and when you bury someone, they will be devoured by maggots. So that's why they have this tradition. But it felt like lore dumping, not fit for, it would interrupt the story flow, like I just did. But let's continue. The smoke rose straight into the sky. He stood alone beside the flames, holding Ismail's hammer in both hands. "I promised," he whispered to the wind. Then Ismail woke screaming, "No, don't, get away." He tore himself upright, claws flashing, eyes wild as he searched the room. Nash was at his side in an instant, grabbing Ismail with both hands. "Ismail, Ismail, look at me." His brother breathing came in short, panicked bursts. "Nash!" Ismail blinked hard, dragging himself back into focus. What happened? I was in the forest. That thing." "You're home," Nash said firmly. "You're safe." Ismail stared at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "You brought me back?" Nash nodded. "You carried me out?" "Yes." A pause. Then Ismail gave a weak laugh. "Figures. Of course you did." He swung his legs over the side of the bed and immediately swayed. Nash steadied him. "My head feels like it's been split open," Ismail muttered. "Where's Aunt Loriora?" "Aunt Loriora, I'm starving. I forgot my rations yesterday." Nash felt something inside him tear. He looked away. "She's gone." Ismail frowned. "Gone where?" Nowhere, Nash said quietly. She didn't survive. The words landed slowly. Ismail stared. No. He pushed past Nash and stumbled towards the kitchen. Auntie? He called. This isn't funny. Nash followed, each step heavier than the last. Ismail took in the broken window, the ruined furniture, the dried blood on the floor. Still he searched. Aunt Loriora? Silence answered. Ismail turned back toward Nash. His eyes filled. What happened? Nash hesitated. Loriora's voice echoed in his skull. Do not tell him. A burglar, Nash said. The lie tasted bitter. Someone broke in while you were gone. I found her, too late. Nash's hands clenched in a clash of confusion and anger. A burglar did this. Nash nodded. Ismail's ears flattened. I've heard rumors, he said, voice tightening. Traveling merchants spoke of murders across Ervenfell. Women found torn apart. They say some killers moving from settlement to settlement. Nash forced himself to agree. That must be it. Ismail swallowed hard. Then we'll find him, that rotten killer. He stepped closer to Nash. We'll hunt him, however far he runs, promise me. Nash met his brother's gaze. He saw that Ismail was the same Ismail who had shared meals with him, laughed with him, followed him everywhere as a child. He also saw claws in the walls behind Ismail. Yes, Nash said, I promise. They packed in silence. Before leaving, both paused at the doorway. Memories rose unbidden. Loriora baking fish cakes, Ismail chasing cloth toys across the floor, Nash pretending to be a dragon while they laughed. Warmth, safety, a life already gone. The memories fade and all that remains is a house in ruin with marks of tragedy. Goodbye, Auntie, Ismail whispered. Nash closed the door. Deep from within Brilliant Forest a wolf howled. Ooh! They walked for hours. Ismail spoke of the creature in the woods, how close it had come, how certain he'd be that he would die. Nash listened. He struggled he struggled to appear interested while holding back a flood of rage. After a while they walked in silence. Only the crunch of leaves beneath their boots and the distant calls of the forest birds followed them. Nash carried Ismail's hammer in his back. He had taken it without thinking, still stained with dried blood from the werewolf's skull. The weight of it was barely noticeable against his gear. Ismail was walking ahead of Nash while whistling. His teeth were crushed together as Nash stared at the back of Ismail's head. Does this come across? Wait a second. This should imply that Nash is staring at his brother's back, holding his teeth together. Let me just reread this, okay? Ismail was walking ahead of Nash while whistling. Hmm. No, I don't like the sound of this. Okay, we will do the following. Nash's teeth were crushing together as he stared at the back of Ismail's head. Yeah, I think this makes more sense. Yeah. His thoughts wandered where he did not want them to go. Image surfaced uninvited. Steel entering flesh. A quick thrust to the heart with the spear. A slice along the throat with the knife. A broken neck with bare hands. One clean ending. He saw those images clearer and clearer. Suddenly he stopped himself. Not because it was difficult, because it was terrifying how easy it felt. They had gone only a short distance when Ismail suddenly halted. The hammer! Nash turned. Wait, if he's in front of Nash, Nash doesn't turn. Nash. Nash rose his gaze. Was he even looking down? Nah. Nash stopped. And stared at him. Yeah, I think this sounds better. Nash just stops and stares at him like, what the? What? Ismail stood frozen, eyes wide. My hammer, his brother said, voice rising. My hammer, he said, not his brother. My hammer, he said, voice rising. Nash, we have to go back. I can't go without it. Nash's chest tightened. It's just a tool, he said too sharply. Ismail shook his head. No, it's not. Father gave it to me. It's all I have of Dad. Please. For a moment Nash said nothing. He reached into his pack and pulled it out. You mean this? Ismail's ear lifted instantly. Oh, thank the beast god. He took it with both hands, inspecting it quickly as if afraid it might vanish. Then he tucked it carefully into a pouch at his belt. It's silly, I know, Ismail said with a small, embarrassed smile, but it matters to me. Nash stared at him, at the familiar way Ismail handled the hammer, at the relief on his face, at the same brother who worried about forgotten tools and sentimental keepsakes. He clenched his jaw until it hurt. Just a moment ago he was ready to end his own brother. This was still Ismail, his Ismail, not the werewolf, not the monster. His brother. Nash turned away before Ismail could notice his expression. Let's keep moving, he said. They walked on, and Nash carried the truth like a wound. The monster lived inside his brother, but so did everything that made him his brother. They made camp that night beneath thin trees and colder stars. While Ismail slept, Nash stayed awake. He watched his brother's chest rise and fall. He listened for change, any sign of transformation. Twice his hand closed around his spear. Twice he released it. Dawn came without transformation. Only then did Nash allow himself to rest. By the time they reached Vlufan, Nash's legs ached and his shoulders burned beneath the weight of his pack. The village clung to the shores of Leafengift Lake, like it feared being shaken loose. Weathered houses leaned against one another, their wooden planks darkened by years of mist and spray. Fishing nets hung drying along crooked posts. The air smelled of damp wood, lake water, and old smoke. Boats bobbed gently at their moorings, and amongst them sat Alcamia. Nash spotted her at once. Ismail stopped beside him. Is that is that rotten thing supposed to carry us across the lake? Nash exhaled. She will, he said. Ships like this survive because they refuse to die. They made their way towards Tribal Trade Office, where merchants from half a dozen races argue loudly over crates and barrels. Nash asked directions from a passing halfling, and was pointed towards a squat. Is it squat or squatted dwarf? Squat. No, squat makes sense. Yeah, he's squat. Yes, apologize. Halfing and was pointed towards a squat dwarf with a black beard and an eye patch. leaning against a stack of cargo while smoking a pipe. The captain. He was in the middle of haggling with a human over barrels of Zul's eye wine. Telling you, that's final, the dwarf growled. 2 silver coins per barrel, or you haul them yourself. Nash waited until the exchange ended, then stepped forward. I need passage. No, wait. Not he. We. We need passage to Leafenwood Port, he said. The captain looked him up and down. Okay, that makes. Yeah, he's looking at Nash. His gaze lingered on Nash's car, on his peer, on Ismail standing slightly behind him. 1 gold, the dwarf said flatly. Nash blinked. 1 gold? Are you serious? That's what I said. Nash reached into his pouch. 55 silver, 20 copper. He counted twice, though he already knew the result. It wasn't even close. He looked at Ismail. His brother met his eyes with quiet expectations, unaware of the weight of the moment. Nash turned back to the captain. That's everything we have. The dwarf shrugged. Then you're not sailing. For a moment Nash considered walking away. They could go around the lake on foot. It would take weeks, maybe longer. Weeks Ismail did not did weeks Ismail might not have. His fingers brushed something hard in his pocket. Metal. He hesitated. Slowly he drew it out. The insignia caught the light. Gold shaped in Dragurian design, bearing the mark of his division. Commander Alan Brimstick had placed it in Nash's palm himself at Bolrove. For honor, for bravery, for surviving when so many had not. Faces rose unbidden. Carroll, laughing before his first charge. Bren, who had carried wounded soldiers on his back until his legs gave out. Marek, who had shared his last water ration without hesitation. They had died screaming beneath black chitin and spear tails, exomorphs. This was all Nash had left of them. His throat tightened. He held the insignia out. The dwarf's eyes widened slightly. He took it a bit gently against he took it a bit gently against the edge, nodded once. That'll do. Just like that. No ceremony, no pause. Gold was gold. Ismail noticed. Nash, that was your... It's fine, Nash said quickly. The captain pocketed the insignia and waved them towards the gangplank. Board when you're ready. They walked onto Alcamia. Good. The deck groaned beneath their weight. Ismail leaned over the railing, staring into the dark water. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I know that meant something to you. Nash stood beside him. He didn't answer at first. He watched the lake ripple against the hull. He imagined the insignia sinking into its depths, resting beside forgotten anchors and broken oars. Yes, he said at last, it did. Ismail lowered his head. But you're worth more than any piece of metal, Nash continued. He placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. Every one of them would agree. Ismail didn't reply. He did not understand what Nash meant, and that Nash meant his dead comrades. He simply leaned against the railing, staring into the water. And Nash stood beside him, silently apologizing to ghosts. Night fell early on Leafengift Lake. Mist rolled low across the water, blurring the distant shoreline into pale shadows. Lanterns along Alchemia's deck burned weakly, their flames trembling in the cold wind. The ship groaned and complained with every small wave. Wood answering water in tired creaks. Ismail slept quietly. He lay wrapped in a thin blanket near a stack of cargo, breathing evenly, unaware of how closely he was being watched. Nash did not sleep. He sat a short distance away, spear across his knees, eyes never leaving his brother. He counted Ismail's breaths, not out of habit, out of fear. Each rise of Ismail's chest felt like a permission to keep living. Each pause made Nash's muscles tighten. He told himself he was being foolish, that daylight that daylight had come once already, that Ismail had woken cattling, confused and grieving but himself. Yet the memory of claws on wood still echoed in his bones. He remembered Loriora's blood on the kitchen floor. He remembered the basement door shuttering under inhuman strength. He remembered kneeling beside her, promising what he did not yet know how to fulfill. Find a cure. Save your brother. Those words had chained him to his path. Once Ismail stirred in his sleep. Nash was on his feet instantly. Nash was on his feet instantly, on spear, heart pounding. But Ismail only rolled onto his side, muttering something incoherent before settling again. Nash forced himself to breathe. He sat back down slowly. He did not release the spear. He watched until dawn. They spent 2 days crossing the lake. The wind faltered often, leaving Alcamia drifting in long, silent stretches. The crew cursed quietly. The sails hung slack. Progress came in uneven bursts. Ismail tried to fill the time with questions. What do wood elves eat? Do they really live inside trees? Do they have markets like humans? Nash answered what he could. Sometimes he pretended to be interested. Sometimes he simply nodded. Every night Nash stayed awake. Every night he waited for bones to twist and fur to erupt. Every night nothing happened. By the third morning, Leavenwood Port came into view. The harbor unfolded like a mosaic of cultures. Stone docks built beside living roots, wooden walkways intertwined with sculpted vines. Human warehouse stood beside wood elven growth halls. Dwarfs' crane of iron rose over halfling market stalls. Ships of every size crowded the water. Voices carried across the port in dozen languages. Ismail stared openly. Brother, he said, eyes wide. I've never seen so many different races in one place. Nash allowed himself a faint smile. There are more than 100 races in Ervenfell, that we know of, he said. If this impresses you, you'd lose your mind in Aragur Volat or Blackened Riff. Ismail laughed softly. I still think it's amazing. They disembarked among merchants, travelers, pilgrims, and mercenaries. For a moment, Nash almost forgot to be afraid. Then he felt it. The looks. It began subtly. A wood elf trader stiffened as they passed. A dark elf paused mid-conversation. A Raphael's gaze followed Ismail with sudden intensity. Nash's hand drifted closer to his spear. Ismail remained oblivious, absorbed in the sights. Then the boots struck stone in unison. Wood elf soldiers moved in with frightening speed, forming a circle around them, spears leveled. Ismail froze. Nash, he whispered. Nash stepped in front of his brother, instinctively planting his feet. What is this? Nash demanded. Yeah, this is the scene. A mounted officer rode forward. Her sapphire armor marked her rank. Her blank hair framed a hard, unyielding face. She pointed her cold gaze at Nash. You dare bring it into our lands, catling. Nash's ears flattened. Bring what? Ismail glanced them between them, confused. What did you bring, brother? Nash did not answer. The lieutenant raised her hand. Kill him. If the uninfected interferes, kill them both. The circle tightened. Ismail lifted his hand instinctively. Nash, I don't understand. Put your hands down, Nash hissed. Stay behind me. Spearheads were approaching the brothers fast. Then a voice cut through the tension like steel. By the order of the Queen, stand down. Every soldier froze as they recognized the voice. A rider approached from the far side of the crowd. Azure Zarenite armor, indigo hair, a presence that carried authority without needing volume. Invildur. The soldiers dropped on one knee. Even the lieutenant dismounted, bowing stiffly. Invildur, the royal knight, she began. We sense the true form of Enough, Amalara. His tone left no room for argument. Make way. You will allow them to proceed. This is Queen Orana's direct command. Amalara's jaw tightened. She bowed again, biting her lip hard enough to draw blood. The circle opened. Nash did not relax. He approached Invildur cautiously. Thank you, Nash said. May I request an audience? May I request an audience with your queen? Okay. Amalara bristled. You insolent, low-born beast! Enough, Invildur snapped. She fell silent. The queen cannot receive visitors, Invildur said calmly. Her premonitions leave her weakened, but she foresaw your arrival. Nash blinked. Your name is Nash Lionroar, son of Leonard. Ismail stared. How does he know about father? Asked Ismail. And you, Invildur continued, gazing briefly at Ismail before shifting his gaze away again, are Ismail. His horse shifted uneasily as Ismail stepped closer. Invildur subtly guided the animal back. I'm surprised, Nash said slowly. She knows of our quest. She does. So do I, Invildur replied. You must travel southwest, through Kataraku village. Do not remain there. Continue to Sinol. There you will meet Darvamir. He will help you. Ismail lingered close to Nash, trying to follow the exchange, his ears twitching at every unfamiliar name. His gaze moved between Invildur and his brother, struggling to piece together what was happening. So, the queen already knows about us? He asked quietly. About the burglar? There was something almost reverent in his voice. When neither man answered him directly, he drifted towards a nearby stall and bought a piece of warm fish bread. He ate slowly, still watching the wood elf soldiers from the corner of his eye, all tangled with unease. Nash noticed the way the elves in the gathered crowd around the soldiers watched Ismail. It was disgust. Not openly, not with weapons raised, with distance, with restraint. Their expressions were tight, controlled, their hands never far from spear shafts. A few muttered slowly in their own tongue. One rough elf turned away entirely. They were not looking at Ismail as a person. They were measuring him. Nash felt it settle into his spine like ice. His grip tightened around his spear. He stepped half a pace closer to his brother, placing him between Ismail and the nearest soldiers without making it obvious. Ismail, mercifully unaware, tore off another piece of bread. Nash watched the small, familiar motion. His brother always broke food instead of biting straight into it, and felt an old ache return. They see it, he thought. Whatever lives inside him now, they see it. And someday they won't hesitate. He lifted his chin, meeting Invildur's gaze again. Whatever this path demanded of him, Nash knew knew one thing with terrible clarity. He would not let them take Ismail. Not today, not ever. Nash bowed. Understood. Darvomir in Sinnoh. We will follow the Queen's will. Invildur leaned closer. One more thing, he whispered. If the beast rises, calm it with wound calm it with wounds to non-vital areas. Coat your weapon in calamir flower, honey. You can buy it in Kataraku. Nash's eyes widened. He bowed deeply. You have my gratitude, both you and your queen. Invildur offered a rare smile. You owe us nothing, Nash. Ervenfell may soon owe you. Nash grabbed Ismail by the arm. Let's go. Wait, I'm still eating. Ismail complained as Nash dragged his arm. They left the port. Ismail looked back once, then forward again. As Nash guided Ismail away from the port onto the forest road, he did not look back. He did not need to. He could feel the eyes on them. Behind them, Amalara stood rigid beside her horse. One gauntlet hand, clenched so tight around her reins that the leather creaked. Her jaw was locked. Her lips still bled faintly where she had bitten it. She watched the catlings disappear between the trees, her gaze burning with restrained fury. Then her eyes shifted to Invildur. He was already turning his mount, preparing to return to the city. His posture calm, unshaken, royal knight, favored servant of the queen. Amalara's fingers twitched. Oh, she looks very angry, huh? Angry elf. You undermine me in front of my soldiers, she whispers. You protect beasts over your own. She swallowed a bile rising in her throat. Curse you, and your queen Invildur. Maybe this needs a comma here. Curse you, and a comma here. And your queen Invildur. Yes. All her life she had served Aluria. She had trained harder than most, bled more than many, risen through ranks that did not forgive weakness. And yet, with a few words, Invildur had stripped her of authority in front of her own unit. For them, beast folk, a catling that carried a monster within. She lowered her gaze just enough to bow, as protocol demanded. But when she straightened, there was nothing respectful in her eyes. Invildur noticed. He met her stare for a brief moment. Something unspoken passed between them. He knew. Amalara turned away sharply. Walking back towards the port, her thoughts spiraled darkly. The queen is wrong. Invildur is blind. Fools. She glanced once more towards the forest path where the brothers had vanished. A slow, dangerous resolve settled into her chest. They have to pay. The Queen, Invildur, and especially the Catling brothers. They must all die. They must all pay, man. I think this fits better. They must all pay. Pay with their life. Yeah, let's add that too. Pay with their life. Makes her more threatening, right? Leafenwood's distant sounds faded behind bark and leaves, replaced by the steady rhythm of footsteps and wind through the branches. Nash kept Ismail slightly ahead of him on the path, close enough to reach, far enough to watch. He told himself it was habit, soldier's instinct, not fear. They walked for hours in silence. Ismail broke it first. She knew, he said quietly. Nash glanced at him. The Queen, Ismail continued. She knew our names. She knew we're hunting that burglar. His voice carried awe more than confusion. That doesn't happen to ordinary people. Nash kept his eyes forward. Queens know many things. Ismail shook his head. Not like that. He let the thought linger, then added softer. Maybe we're not as alone in this as I thought. Nash did not answer. They made camp that night beneath a strand of bent ash trees. Nash built the fire with Ismail gathering kindling. The familiar motion steadied Nash's hand, even as his mind refused to be quiet. When Ismail finally lay down to sleep, Nash did not. He sat with his spear across his knees and his knife within reach. He watched, he listened. Beastfolk training. He told himself he was guarding against wolves, against Trovuk, against anything that might come out of the forest. He did not tell himself the truth. A warm lie was more comfortable than a cold truth. Nash placed his hand above the campfire, waiting. Morning came without blood. Ismail stretched, yawned, and smiled at him like nothing in the world was broken. They walked another day. The land softened as Kataraku drew near. Lighter trees, open clearings, the distant sound of running water. Smoke curled lazily from the cluster of rooftops grown into living trunks. Bridges of woven branches arching between platforms. Kataraku, a wood-elf trade village nestled among river-fed terraces. Nash halted just outside its outer paths. You wait here, he told Ismail. Watch the gear. Ismail frowned. I want to see it. I want to see the village. I want to see the village. Later, Nash said gently. On our way back. On our way back. On our way back. Ismail hesitated. You promise? Nash forced a smile. I promise. Ismail nodded, settling beside their packs. Nash entered Kataraku alone. Eyes followed him immediately. Not openly hostile, but wary, curious. More than a few noses wrinkled as he passed. He moved quickly. He found he found a stile shaded beneath pale leaf branches, jars of amber liquid glowing softly in filtered sunlight. A wood-elf merchant watched him approach, expression unreadable. Yeah, it looks like. Why is this cattling here? Never mind, just give me gold. The wood-elf merchant glanced at him briefly, then reached beneath the counter without comment. He set a small sealed vial on the wood. Wait a second. I'm missing something here. Calamere honey. Said Nash. Yeah, that makes more sense. Nash placed the coins beside it. Neither of them spoke. The merchant slid the vial towards him. Is this a vial? Or how would you call this? Jar? Jar? Yeah. I would say that it's a jar. Right? Does it mention any vials anywhere? Small seed jar. Jars. Oh, there. Okay. Why did I change it to vial? Man, too much RPG games. Okay, the merchant slid the jar towards him. Nash tucked the honey away and turned immediately, already moving before the elf could look at him again. Okay. On the way back, he stopped once more, purchasing dried meat, travel, bread, and fresh bindings for Ismail's boots. Only then did he return. Ismail brightened when he saw him. Did you get everything? Nash nodded. tightening the strap on their pack. They left Kataraku behind and followed the southwest road, toward Sinul, toward whatever waited for them. And Nash walked beside his brother carrying honey for a monster, a promise to the dead, and a blade he prayed he would never have to use. Now, as you can see, I will still have to do a final read of this, a final revision. Once I'm done with the whole book, I will have to do a check. What I've noticed already, there is an error, inconsistency more than an error. See, the problem is, why are they going to the Wood Elf region? Their mission does change there at Leafenwood Port, but why are they going there in the first place? I have that in my original book, in the original script, in the manual-like book, but it seems that I skipped over it here. What I will add to this chapter will be maybe one sentence that just implies that elves would have more knowledge about curses. That's the motivation why Nash travels there. But he has to also lie about it, telling that the burglars most likely went towards that route. You know? Yeah. But basically, overall, that is the chapter. You know, it's just that little thing that I seem to have forgotten. The motivation why they're going to the Wood Elf region anyway. But once they are there, they get their new purpose, so to say. All right, thanks for watching. And oh my God, did I read this for an hour? Are you kidding me? Wow, I knew it was long, but not an hour long. All right, thanks. If you are still here, thanks for watching, and bye.